The concept I'm titling is called sampling risk. First point that you have to remember, sampling risk arises only because of sampling and not anything else. Okay, so let me put up some headings for you as to how we are going to understand which audit procedure. We have two audit procedures. Which audit procedures? We're talking about two of them. One is called as test of controls. Other one is called as substantive procedures. We'll say test of details. Okay, guys, concentrate on the headings also carefully. How this is being built is very important. So two types of audit procedures, and I am talking about conclusions. Conclusions reached by the auditor based on sample. Conclusions based on one side sample, the other side conclusions based on had you audited the entire population. Had you audited the entire population, what would have been your conclusion? That is the other side. So two procedures, and conclusion what auditor got based on sample versus what conclusion based on population. Now, ideally speaking, after understanding the entire concept of sampling, if sampling technique works, which ideally should, if it works, then tell me guys, is it simple? The conclusion that auditor reaches on the sample should be the same conclusion that auditor will reach on the population. Yeah, audit procedures when he performs, right, based on sample, we talk about the concept like that. So where you clearly can take a sample and come to a conclusion on that. Now that conclusion that you come based on sample will represent the conclusion on whole population, right? This is the normal rule. What is the concept of sampling risk? Let me explain you. Very simple concept of sampling risk. Risk that auditor's conclusion, risk that auditor's conclusion based on sample. On any other day, conclusions based on sample should be the conclusion based on population. That's the idea. But there is that auditor's conclusion based on sample may be different. May be different. May be different from what? Sorry, wait. May be different. May be different from the conclusion. May be different from the conclusion that auditor would have reached. May be different from the conclusion that auditor would have reached based on population. Very simple ma. Ideally we want both these to be same, but the possibility that these two will be different, huh? The possibility that they may be different, this may be is only called as sampling risk. So is there a risk inherent? Of course there is a risk that is always there inherent. The answer is a big yes. There are no two thoughts about it. Okay, so sampling risk is a risk that auditor's conclusion based on sample may be different. Now in various ways this risk can originate. So it can originate in compliance procedures. Okay, it can originate in substantive procedures. And how does it originate? That also I'm going to explain you now. Okay, so audit procedures, conclusion based on both these. What is the risk and what is the effect? So you have totally 5 headings ma. Okay, if you're making a table like this, okay, You have 5 headings, and here conclusions are split like this, okay? And then this. Now, two conclusions each place. Watch this very carefully. Very easy, ma. Concentrate. That's all I need is proper concentration. In test of controls, based on sample, based on sample, auditor came to a conclusion that, okay, auditor came to a conclusion that since we are testing controls, we are going to use the word effective, ineffective, okay? So based on sample, auditor came to a conclusion that controls are effective. Controls are what? Effective. But you know what is the truth? Had you audited the entire population, you would have got to know that they are not effective. Is that a serious danger? Based on sample, you declared controls are effective, but in reality, they are not. Did you blindly believe that controls are doing great? Did you over rely on the controls based on sample? It's a classic example of a sampling risk where you over relied on a control. You should not have relied so much on the control, but you over relied on a control, and such risk, all are sampling risks only. Sampling risk has various 4 components, okay, not various, only 4. So this kind of a risk where you based on sample are blindly believing that yes, all controls are effective, and when you believe that controls are effective, you will not even do so much of substantive procedures. So the risk is very high, and that risk is called as risk of over reliance. Yes, my entire NTE of audit procedures you will change because you over relied on a control. And what will be the effect here? And the effect will be very, very dangerous, right? What will be the effect? Wrong audit opinion. You end up, did you follow the chain effect? You believed that controls are excellent, and because you believed controls are excellent, you will not do substantive procedures so much, and when you're not doing substantive procedures, risk automatically goes up and you end up giving what is called wrong audit opinion. But let me tell you one more story here, which is the opposite of this. Based on sample, you concluded that controls are not effective, okay? Based on sample, you conclude that controls are not effective, but actually they are effective. I'll tell you, there won't be a big problem here. You know what will happen? Based on sample, when you come to a conclusion, previous point, jail. Okay, this wrong audit opinion, jail only. But next point you see, in test of controls, okay, in test of controls, what happened? In test of controls, you check that the controls are not effective. Okay. Now, the moment you find something is not effective, the moment you find something is not effective, will you extend the sample size? Of course, you will extend the sample size. And when you extend the sample size, little more and little more, eventually will you get to know the truth? Array, controls are effective only unnecessarily. I only didn't rely on the sample properly. Actually, if you had audited properly on the first sample that you picked, you would have got to the right conclusion. But you made an erroneous call saying that this sample is giving me a feeling that controls are not effective. So you extended it and you under relied on the sample, which is quite opposite to the earlier one what you did. Okay, you could have nicely relied on a sample, but you didn't rely and you called it ineffective, and then you unnecessarily extended the procedures and you did all sorts of more and more audit work, but eventually you got to know the truth. The second one is not as dangerous as the first one, and these kind of risks are called as risk of under reliance. Where you could have relied nicely, you didn't rely. Risk of under reliance. And this time in risk of under reliance, you would not definitely give a wrong opinion, but from 300 you made it 400, 400 to 500. Did you increase and do more audit work? This results in more audit work. This results in more audit work. Same guys, everybody, are we clear on this one? Meanwhile, as I continue, you guys can throw up a confirmation. That is on test of controls. Same logic can apply for test of details. There also two branches. What are the two branches? Based on sample, auditor concludes that material misstatement does not exist. Material misstatement does not exist, but in fact it exists. Okay, you took a sample and you decided that material misstatement does not exist. When you believe that material misstatement does not exist, why will you extend the sample size? You won't. And you concluded that misstatements are not there. Just like the first one there. You accepted a sample which you shouldn't accept. This is called risk of incorrect acceptance. Yes, ma, very good. This is called risk of incorrect acceptance. You wrongly accepted a sample which you shouldn't, and the effect will be same like the first case. You will end up giving what is called as a wrong audit opinion or erroneous audit opinion. Okay, this is a danger here. Wrong audit opinion. And in the other case, that is also very clear, where you will consider that misstatement exists. In sample you found few misstatements, so you decided that whole population many misstatements will be there, but in fact material misstatement does not exist. When you check the entire population at a population level, you get to know that that many misstatements don't exist. So you could have nicely accepted the sample itself, but you rejected the sample and say no misstatement exists. This sort of a risk is termed as risk of incorrect rejection. Risk of what? Incorrect rejection. And this will definitely again lead to more audit work. When you believe misstatement exists, you will extend the sample size and you will eventually do more audit work, but you will eventually get to know the truth. So under reliance and incorrect rejection are not very scary, but only waste your time. But sometimes that is also a problem because client will be pressurizing you for the report. 1 and 3 are very dangerous. Over reliance and incorrect acceptance will lead you to a wrong audit opinion. So this is the story of the concept of sampling risk.